Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Hopefully if you like this enough you'll stick around and watch the whole video. Or not, who cares, I don't care. In today's video we are going to be reading the Divergent series. Yeah. The reason for this is mainly because with the resurgence of how much The Hunger Games has been getting so much hype, plus they just announced a new book, so that's obviously gonna get another movie. I'm also in that hype train a lot, but it just made me think on like all the dystopian novels, the teen dystopian novels that I loved back in the day. And surprisingly enough, The Hunger Games wasn't like my first one. I read that and watched it very late in the game. Like I watched it a few years after it came out. So it wasn't my introduction. It wasn't like that nostalgic for me. Like yes, I was obsessed at that time with it, but it was very much like I got the hype very late. But basically, my nostalgia for the dystopian YA was definitely Divergent. These books shaped me. They were one of the first kind of like books, like novels that I read that weren't like Diary of a Wimpy Kid or Dark Diaries. So they really got me into like this different genre, this different type of book, like reading for fun that isn't like diary styled books. And it was just like a step up from like middle grade to YA. So that's why I have a lot of nostalgia for these books. And I kind of want to see what they're like 10 years later. I'm a little bit scared because I remember the first book, I loved it. I remember the second book not liking it as much, and the third book, I didn't really have a problem with it, but once I got into booktube and like started watching people's videos, everyone said like the third book is so bad, and I don't remember it being that bad. Like yeah, it wasn't amazing, it wasn't the best, but like I've seen worse books, you know? I'm kind of scared that now, having grown a little bit, I might see what the problem is, but at the time I didn't have a problem with it, like not that much. So yeah, this supposedly is going to have spoilers, but I don't know if like they're spoilers. Like they've been out for 10 years, which is what kind of like also prompted me to want to film this whole journey of reading these books again, because like it's been 10 years. How can it have been 10 years already? I don't feel like the movies have been out also for ages. I'm finally gonna watch Allegiant because I have not watched Allegiant. I remember the second film, I didn't like it at all because it completely veers off the book, and I remember hearing like nothing good about the third movie, so I never watched it. But we're gonna watch it this time and we're gonna see what do we think. The Divergent series consists of Divergent, Insurgent, Allegiant, and I've got this like short story collection of 4, which I remember loving. The fact that I read this, I loved it. But yeah, basically it's these 3 books plus this one, just because I own it, I might as well read it for this video. So yeah, let's get into it. With Divergent, the first one is the world. Let's just do the setting for you. It is 5 factions. The society is divided into 5 factions. We've got Dauntless, Erudite, Abnegation, Candor, and Amity. At 16 years old, you're allowed to choose kind of like which faction you want to be in. So like if you want to stay in the one you were raised in, like where your parents are, or do you want to like venture out to a different one? There's kind of like that going on, and that happens every year when you're 16. We're also set in Chicago, but it's like dystopian because like there's buildings that are run down, and they've like built different buildings for the people who live there now. That's kind of like how the society is divided. And also, yeah, we just follow Triss as her choosing day, I think it's called. Her choosing day comes and she wants to kind of like, doesn't know if she wants to stay in her faction or leave it because she doesn't really feel like she belongs. It's like very much giving every single teenager, like no one feels like they belong at this age. So she was off the bat very relatable to me, and yeah, I remember absolutely loving this book and loving the romance. This is gonna be a fun time. So yeah, I'll talk to you when I have a little bit of update. Like quickly recap kind of like how much I've read, because I've got like some thoughts and just kind of want to recap all of it because I'm having so much fun. I do really enjoy it. I think it is so much fun to read. Anyway, I feel like I repeat myself a lot when I talk, but anyway, the first thing that I want to point out is that out of the 5 factions that I mentioned earlier, I always felt that like there's a few things that I don't understand, because for example, like amity and abnegation, which are known to be like kind and selflessness, how are they not the same faction, you know? Like, aren't they kind of like pretty much the same thing? And they're like drastically different in like their ways of life. But why? How did someone go like, okay, unkindness and being not selfless is not kind of like the same thing? I always had a problem with that, and I always have never understood why candor is a thing. Like, what do these people do? Like, are they all lawyers? I've never understood candor, why there's such a big thing, why being truthful. How many jobs can you get from just being truthful? Like, how does that make sense? I do not know, but doesn't really matter. Right off the bat, by the way, we're set in the world of abnegation, which is the faction that is, they also govern this little society of theirs, because their whole thing is that they're selfless. So they only think about other people, and they hate self-indulgence, like they hate anything to do with self-preservation. It's not that they hate it, they just don't, they don't participate in it. So they very much think about other people first, and they are very quiet. They're known to be very quiet, very stiff is what the people call them. And yeah, they're just like, they have very plain food, very plain clothes, they're all grey, everyone's the same, no one's more special than the other. It's kind of like this kind of dreary, quiet kind of life, which some people enjoy, but our main character doesn't really enjoy that. She wants a little bit more adventure. She feels suffocated in this environment, and she feels like she doesn't belong. But on the other hand, her brother Caleb, he looks like he belongs. He always helps other people. He's great at volunteering. He kind of like knows how to help someone very quickly, while it takes her like 2 seconds to think about it. Like, she might be thinking about it, but it'll take her a bit longer to actually act on it. So she feels like she doesn't belong, especially compared to her older brother, who it comes so naturally. They'll eventually like give you what faction your aptitude is most eligible for. So she kind of wants to know what the aptitude test will tell her, and from there she can like pick, because she doesn't know what she wants. She doesn't know if she should stay, and she's scared that the test will tell her to go or to tell her to stay, but she at least will have like kind of more or less a what to do kind of situation. So the next day they have that aptitude test, and she meets Tori, who is the one person who's going to take her test, and she is from Dauntless. Tori is, by the way. And the Dauntless are kind of like the soldiers of the world, and they're all known to be kind of like reckless and free-spirited, but reckless and stubborn and kind of like crazy people. If you've seen the movie, you will understand what I mean. She does the aptitude test and it comes out inconclusive, meaning she gets 3 results, 3 of the factions, which is unheard of, which is impossible. She gets erudite, which are like the smart people, abnegation, and dauntless, and she's kind of like, wait, what? But what am I supposed to do with this information? And Tori explains to her, well, she doesn't really explain it, by the way. She just kind of goes, yeah, you're divergent. I'm just going to put in that you got abnegation. Don't tell anyone about this. And she's kind of like, wait, what? Which is always fun to see your protagonist being like, wait, what am I? So divergent apparently means that you like fit into multiple of the factions, and these people are hunted down, and they are deemed uncontrollable by the leaders of society, so it's very dangerous for her to be divergent. And yeah, so she's basically still left with, well, what am I supposed to choose? Like, I don't want to stay where I am. I don't know if I should leave. I don't know in which faction I'm supposed to be in. Apparently I can fit in 3 factions, but not erudite. She will never go to erudite, because erudite recently have been posting, well, I don't know if it's really posting, but they've been releasing news articles about how abnegation are stealing food, how they're corrupt, how they're all kind of like bad, and how erudite should be ruling the society because they're smarter. So obviously there's a little bit of conflict, a little bit of tension rising up there, so she's not going to choose erudite, but she still doesn't know if she wants to go. She kind of low-key wants to go to Dauntless. And so then in the choosing ceremony is the next day, right? It's right, next day, yeah. So in the choosing ceremony, she's shocked. Her brother goes up first, and he chooses erudite. The guy who is selfless to the core, who she thought 100% was going to just stay in that faction and stay with her mother and her father so she wouldn't have to feel the guilt of like leaving them, he goes and chooses erudite, the literal enemy of abnegation. So she's kind of shook. She's kind of shocked about this, and she doesn't know what to do, but she still goes up, and when it's her turn to choose, she chooses Dauntless. Plot twist that no one ever saw coming, that we didn't see coming at all, especially not by like the cover. Who could tell? But anyway, So yeah, she chooses Dauntless, and it kind of just happens very quickly how she has to start initiation and has to go to the Dauntless compound and learn about everything. On the way there, she makes friends with a lot of the transfers that are from like different factions. So she makes friends with Christina, Al, and Will, and she also makes some new enemies. Also from Candor, we meet Peter, who is, honestly, he's not the best character, but he's definitely one of the better characters in the movie. He's so funny. Like, Miles Teller does a really good job at like just bringing comedy into this serious movie. I feel like the casting for the movie, I'm sorry if I keep bringing up the movie, I like recently watched it, and so it's very fresh in my mind, and I do really like the casting. I think it is very well casted, and it's who I imagine in the book. Kind of like, I read the book after I watched the movie, so I definitely had like their faces, like these characters, these protagonists, these actors in my head while I was reading this again, and it's honestly perfect casting. Honestly, it's so much fun. And they realized that once what Dauntless initiation is, there's a few stages, and the first stage is like combat fighting or something like that, and like basically you get knocked down, beaten up, or you beat up someone and you get points, and like you're ranked, and only the top 10 are that are ranked get to stay in Dauntless and like become members of this faction. And so she's like, well shit, I am not strong, I am not quick or anything, like I am going to lose. So like there's this whole montage, in my head it's a montage, like she also does a lot of training in the book of like trying to be better and like trying to fight other people, and she gets close to her instructor, who is the best character in the whole franchise. I love him so much that he's this like angry, mean this sounds so wrong, but anyway, he's this like very mean, angry instructor who basically trains up the transfers, because not only are there transfers, obviously there's people who chose Dauntless who were already from Dauntless, and she makes friends with quite a few of those, but they're not as prominent in this book as in the next ones, so I'm not really going to talk about them as much, because from what I remember, like they're not that important in this book. But yeah, basically she makes a lot of friends, she makes some enemies, and she's just kind of like being worried about making it into Dauntless because she's not good at fighting, and she's getting beat up a lot, and she is not doing too good. But maybe with a little help of her instructor, it might all turn out okay. But anyway, one of the best points for her training was the capture the flag game that they play. All the initiates and a few of the older members too also go and play capture the flag, so they divide the team in two. She basically comes up with a amazing strategy of like climbing. Honestly, it makes no sense, but while the others are fighting on like what strategy to go, she goes like, well, I'm just gonna walk away and try to get a higher advantage point, and she climbs up this Ferris wheel with Thor, obviously, who we learn is afraid of heights, but he still follows her anyway just to make sure she's okay, because we love that in a man. And can you tell how much I love Thor? Anyway, we see her go up the stairs, like they find where the flag is, so like they know where it is, they come up with a strategy, she comes up with a strategy, I'm pretty sure, and she gets to capture the flag, and she does kind of get into a little bit of a weird situation with Christina, because she kind of like grabs the flag first, and she's like, well, I did all the hard work, why did you grab it? But it's fine, whatever, I don't care. It is honestly one of the best moments, because obviously it's the first time we kind of get a little bit more of Thor and Triss together by themselves. But anyway, the next thing is visiting day, which is when like people from other factions can go visit their family. So basically like the parents, they might come or they might not, like either way, because like obviously parents who you just abandoned might be angry about it, so she's not sure if her parents are actually going to come up. But lo and behold, her mother does show up, and by the way she acts, by the way she kind of like knows where she's going, Triss realizes that, oh my god, my mother was Dauntless before she was Abnegation. She was a transfer. She grew up here. Gets that energy boost of like seeing her mom and not having such a bad time. But her mom tells her, hey, you gotta go visit your brother because Abnegation, like we're not allowed to go see him anymore. But you gotta go to him and ask him to research simulations. There's a lot of simulations in this franchise. I don't understand it. What Veronica Roth was thinking of, like, why is there so many simulations? Why is everything done through a simulation? Like, it's fun, but there's too much, you know? Anyway, and she's kind of like, well, I can't really do that. I'm not allowed, but whatever. The best part is definitely just, like, the Thor romance. Thor and Triss romance. Just anything with Thor in it. Any of his scenes are just amazing. And I love him so much. So, yeah. I'll talk to you when I've actually read a little bit more. So know how I said I'll update you guys when I've read a little bit more? Yeah, I kind of meant when I actually finished the book. So let's just kind of like run through what happened and give you my thoughts and feelings. And I'm thinking let's also do like a movie commentary about it because the movie's great. And I want more people to acknowledge the fact that the movie is... I'm making a lot of noise. I am so sorry. I want more people to acknowledge the fact that the movie is good. The first one is very good. I haven't watched the other two, and I haven't seen the second one in a long time. So basically, from the last thing that I have written down that I talked about was the visiting day thing. So after visiting day, the first round of eliminations starts, and that is when Tris goes, okay, am I gonna make it? Am I not gonna make it? There's this like little bit of tension, but obviously like she makes it, obviously. But the guy who's ranked first is not Peter, the bully. It is just this guy called Edward who's like really good at fighting. Yeah, gets his eye stabbed in the middle of the night, which is something that they filmed for the movie, but they didn't actually like talk about it. Like it was cut out of it, which I'm not sure if that was good or bad, but anyway, this guy gets stabbed and so he's like, well, I'm just gonna leave. And his girlfriend also leaves. So like there's now about 7-ish initiates that are transfers, whereas there's still like a few that are dauntless, born and raised. Basically Tris makes it and a guy gets stabbed in the eye and leave. Brutal. It is very brutal to be here. So now we go into the next stage of the training, which is the fear simulations, which is a little bit different to the movie. But anyway, basically in this stage there is no kind of like cuts or anything. It's just they inject a serum into you and you live your fear over and over again. Basically it's kind of like to see how you confront your fear and to control your thinking while facing your biggest fear. And there's a lot of fears that are exaggerated. Like the first one she gets is like being attacked by crows, which is not really going to happen in real life, but whatever. And this is where it kind of gets a little hard to explain, but basically she can manipulate the simulation. So she can like tell it's not real and like say, well, I want to conjure up something. She conjures it up and she gets out of the fear. And so 4 realizes she is divergent and he goes, girl, you gotta get your act together. Like you cannot, like people will kill you if they know that you're divergent, so you have to hide it better in the simulations. Like people cannot know about you being divergent. You're doing things that are divergent. And she's kind of like, oh shit. But she gets really good at the simulations, which makes her skyrocket to be like the first in the whole class. And because she gets ranked first, she is now under a lot of pressure, a lot of scrutiny. Like her friends thought that she was just this like person who cannot protect herself, who like needs help for being protected, and now it turns out like she's better than everyone else. So they're kind of like staying away from her low-key, and that's what gets her into trouble because the guy's Peter, who is the one who stabbed someone in the eye, for him and his friends go and try to push her off a ledge basically into a chasm. So she has a terrible experience that, and of course who else saves her but our 4, who hears her scream and goes and brutally hurts one of them. There's 3 attackers against 1, which is not unfair, obviously, but one of them is Al, who is her friend, who has been failing miserably, might I add, throughout this whole initiation process, and so he's just kind of like scared, which is not really like why you should still try to throw your friend off a cliff, but whatever. That's kind of his reasoning over it. So she's kind of like shook that her friend would do that to her. So we get the best moment ever out of this part of the book because he takes her back to his place, he makes sure she's okay, and she's like, wait, but are you okay? They have this really cute moment. She sleeps in his bed while he sleeps on the floor, and then she's like, well, what am I supposed to do now? How do I continue? I'm scared out of my life. Like, I am, but I don't want them to see that they had any effect on me. And he's like, well, you gotta get your friends to like you again, like the ones who can actually protect you. So that is Christina and Will now, because obviously one of them is a traitor. I'm having just such a fun time with the 4 interest moments. Like I love them so much in this book. Soon after this, like she does do the whole confronting Al, being like, don't touch me, don't come near me again or I will kill you. And her friends are like, what happened? And by the way, they're developing their own little romance, but they're like, okay, yeah, we'll stick to us, we'll protect you no matter what. And then Al goes and feels really bad and he jumps off the cliff that he originally was trying to throw her off. Basically, he unalives himself. I don't know how to say this. She is distraught. She doesn't know if it's her fault or if it's not her fault, and she's kind of like doesn't care, but she does care. She doesn't know how to feel about it, and all the time like the Dauntless are just chanting, yeah, he's a hero for discovering the unknown, and she's kind of like just mad, going like, no, it's the coward way out. Like, what are you doing? What are you saying? And again, 4 confronts her and 4 goes, hey, I know you're right. but you gotta like chill. Like he's trying to look out, and he cheers her up, which is great, and I love it so much. And then starts the third round of initiation, which is the fear landscape. So it's not really 100% explained well. Like the way Veronica Roth explains it, I'm just gonna leave this here, the way she explains it is that it's just this kind of like area that's bordered off, and you get injected into the serum, and basically it's the same as the fear simulation, except like you can actually move around in it and you can actually manipulate it the way Tris can do in the other simulation. Not confusing at all, but in my mind it's like, okay, so it's like just doing the simulation, the fear simulation, but it's VR mode. Like you can actually move around, you can actually do something. So in my head, like they were running around with VRs. That's not what happens, that's not how they describe it at all, but like that's what's in my head. Like they're just running around this area with a VR game, essentially. Something happens that Tris goes through Four's fear landscape, because he's like, well, I want to tell you more about myself. And so he lets her in to see his fears, which is very intimate, very personal. And so it's heights, it's confinement, and it's also like killing innocent, or like he's afraid of the monster he can become, because his fourth fear is his father, who didn't treat him the best. I feel like that's very not saying it properly, but basically his father didn't treat him very well, very much abused him during his childhood, and he has nightmares about it, and he doesn't want anyone to know. And it is the one thing that kind of like made sure that he would leave abnegation. So she's shocked, so he like knows who he is. He is the son of the leader, essentially, of the whole society. She now knows that he was from abnegation, just like her. She's like, well, that's it? You've got 4 fears and that is it? Like, that's insane. Even by like Dauntless standards, that's insane. And he's like, yep, I'm the youngest. Yep. And that's kind of like where that leads to. And then they go off to these like rocks across the chasm, and like it's a waterfall or something like that, and they have their first kiss, and it is so sweet and it is so nice, and I love it so much. It is my little heart. I love it. I love it so much. I just love these two so much in this book. But yeah, they share their first kiss, and it is really cute, and I really liked it. It's a really cute scene. She then goes through her own fear landscape as the final test, and she passes. She ends up ranked first, I think. Yeah, she ends up ranked first, and there's a huge celebration, but then she like just goes to bed and like everything's good. But right after she comes out of like her final test simulation, Eric, bad Dauntless leader, who is like basically the bad guy in this book, injects her with a serum, saying this is like a tracker in case you get lost ever. I didn't mention this, but like she did actually go to Erudite and talk to her brother, who has kind of turned sides. He's like very much, I think Erudite's right, they should have more power, like abnegation can't have all the power. And she's kind of like, can you hear yourself right now? And she tells him, hey, mom asked you to do the research for the simulation serum and I gotta go. And she does, and she leaves. Which also, and when she gets back, it also leads to a very cute moment with Four, because he like kind of protects her. There is also a knife throwing scene that I just completely skipped over and didn't talk about, but I forgot about it, but I was talking about it before. So yeah, basically it doesn't really matter. What happens is that the Dauntless then, after the day of initiation, like after they've all passed, all the ones we like, basically, after everyone passes, she wakes up to everyone else waking up and getting ready, and they're all in a sim, she realizes, but she is not affected by the sim because she is divergent, and the divergents, for some reason, who I don't understand this, like why are they aware during a simulation? What part of being to be able to fit into multiple faction would lead to being aware during simulations? It's really weird. I don't understand it, and yeah, I wish someone would explain this to me because I don't understand it. Anyway, she realizes like they're attacking abnegation, and she's like, well, what the hell am I gonna do? I gotta shut this down. And they get caught trying to like she's trying to rescue her parents because she's worried about them, and Four, she realizes divergent because he's aware during the simulation too, because she wasn't 100% sure about it beforehand, but she is now. They get caught. She gets shot, so Janine, who's the bad guy from Erudite, who's the leader of Erudite, who is the one who's like orchestrating this whole thing, is like, well, I can't use you because you're hurt. And she sends her off to her death, where she tries to drown her in a tank that was in her fear simulation, because she wanted to see it's so twisted, but she wanted to see how she would react to one of her like fears that was in her fear landscape in real life, to see like what would you actually do like in real life. She takes 4 with her because if she can test newer simulations on him who's divergent, maybe she can like get the divergence under control as well. Then she gets dragged to her death. She gets saved by her mother who's there, and she's like, you're alive, you're okay, you're fine. And she's like, yeah, we got a bunch of us out and we're hiding away here. And during the travel of getting to point A to point B, so where the other ones are hiding, she like saves Triss, and Triss also shoots Will, which is one of her best friends, but he was under their simulation, so you know, she has a hard time with it. And her mother dies in front of her as well. So then she gets to this place where they're all hiding. 4's father's there too. I don't have to call him 4 twice now, but anyway, 4's father is there too, and he's like, yo, what is happening? Why are the Dauntless attacking? And she's like, they're in a simulation, we gotta go find them. They do this whole thing where they go into Dauntless compound. Her father dies, again protecting her. So she loses both parents very quickly. Her brother's also there, by the way. I didn't mention this, but he's like, yeah, I looked into the research simulation and I figured out what they were trying to do and I left. And he is just like shocked about, 1, his sister going around killing people, 2, that his parents are like dying left and right, literally. And she's just kind of like, I gotta stay focused, I gotta go get 4 and I gotta turn the simulation off somehow. So she goes in alone, go solo, because they've left 4 to man the reins of this whole operation, which I don't know why they do that. Like, there's gotta be someone else with him, like he's under a simulation that looks like it's working. She snaps him out of it even after they tried to kill each other, and it's only because she was like, okay fine, whatever, kill me, I don't want to kill you. They shut down the simulation, they put it in this like hard drive and they take it with them, and they run away essentially on a train, essentially to Amity, but we don't know, it kind of like just ends there. So that was like a recap. I'm sure I didn't do it justice. I know I left out like a lot of the key points that happened, like the knife throwing I totally forgot about. Dauntless friends. Oh, she got tattoos too. She talks more to Tori. I'm leaving all this stuff out because it doesn't really feel relevant for the story in itself, but whatever. Overall, I did give it 5 stars because I do really like it. I had a really fun time reading it. I do just overall think it's a fun book, and it did what it had to do. It kept me entertained. I loved the romance in it. It is the funnest part of it, in my opinion. So I did have a fun time with it. I cannot complain. I love it as much as I loved it when I was a kid. Again, doesn't hurt the fact that 4 is Theo James in my mind, so it's fine. Even though in the book they say he has blue eyes, it's like, no. He does not have blue eyes, he has brown eyes, and they are perfect. I do think that the plot in this one is the best well-developed plot, because we have obviously her going through initiation, but we do have an overarching plot. And now a little bit of a review for the movie. I also love the movie. I think I've mentioned previously that I do love the casting for it, because it is just a perfect cast in my opinion. Like, the movie's so good, the casting is so good, and also the soundtrack for that movie is honestly really good. Like, I forgot about it and I've been using it while I was reading. That's what I put on. Like, I forgot how good the soundtrack is. I love the movie so much. Can you not tell? And yeah, if you're gonna read any of these books, it's definitely Divergent. It's the best one. I know it kind of goes downhill from here, but I remember not caring too much about what happened in the book. It just like being with the characters, and I remember not liking Triss in the second one. I found her like aggravating, and I always remembered that Insurgent always was the book that took me the longest to read, because it was just, I just took forever to read. It just was slow paced to me, I think. But we'll see what I think about it now, so I'll talk to you when I've actually read it, or read a little bit of it. We'll see. I'm coming to film an update because I finished Insurgent and I gave it 3 stars. I kind of knew this going in, that this is my least favorite book of the whole trilogy, but I know why. Like, I got the audiobook just because I knew I was kind of like, I don't really want to read this. I had no desire of picking it up, so I got through it with the audiobook. But other than that, there are moments that I liked and moments that are not, but let's just recap. Because in this one we follow the main characters, and they are literally right back where we left off in the first book. They are running away for their lives, away from Erudite, and they run to Amity, and they're like, hey, you guys, you gotta help us out somehow, we've been running. And they're like, yeah, okay, sure. They come together, and the way they decide things, because like in this one we kind of expand on how the other factions work, because we've learned how Dauntless and Abnegation and a little bit about how Erudite works, but we don't really know about Amity and Candor because they really just don't talk about them in the first book that much. So in this one we do get that, and Amity. We learn that they're all like peace-loving, hippie kind of farmer vibes. And the way they decide things are like talking in groups. And they have one spokesperson, they don't really have a leader. So it's kind of like what the majority wants is what you end up getting. They're like, okay, you guys can stay. We're not going to go up against Erudite for you, but you guys can stay. We'll make safe houses for everyone throughout this war because we're like friends with Erudite. We work with them a lot. We don't really want to like ditch them, even though they're like terrible people right now. So yeah. And this whole time Triss is having a hard time with the death of Will, especially. Yes, her parents as well, but Will especially because she actually killed him, and she's feeling that guilt coming into her now. So yeah, she's not having a good time, and she decides that she's got to cut off all her hair. One day randomly Triss follows Marcus. Like the rest of the abnegation are also there, like they ran to Amity as well. So she follows Marcus one day, who's talking to Joanna, who is the spokesperson for Amity, and he's like, we died for this information or something, or like this important information. And Triss is kind of like, well, we need to find out what this information is. She goes to Tobias for, I don't know what to call him yet. We're gonna call him Tobias. She goes to Tobias and is like, hey, I heard your dad. He's saying that they've got some like important secret, important information, and that is why Janine, Erudite, attacked Abnegation at this precise point. Why did they do it now? Because of this information. And Tobias is like, yeah, no, my dad is like over exaggerating, like he's an asshole, like he hit me as a kid, like I don't think it's that important. I think we need to, we've got other issues to solve, like this isn't that important. So she's like, don't agree with you, but okay, I do agree that we have other issues. So then Erudite, Dauntless soldiers, so Dauntless people who like agree with Erudite, show up at Amity, and they're like, yeah, you guys need to round up, we're gonna do some testing, and we want to get all the divergents. The abnegation people try to blend in with the Amity, so they're all pretending, and also Triss destroys the information that they stole in the first book, like the simulation and pretty much all the data from Erudite. She destroys that disc because for some reason they took all the information. They didn't destroy it in the first place, which I don't understand. Like they also, Peter stole it at the beginning of the book as well. He's like, I took it from you, and they like had a fight to get it back, because Peter's with them, by the way. I don't think I mentioned that in the last one, but basically Peter's with them because he was like, you know what, they found him in the middle of the whole problem and he ended up with them. Kind of like, if they don't, they're gonna kill me, so I might as well help them. That kind of situation. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, Peter's with them, so he took it and they got it back, but now they've destroyed it because they're like, well, we're gonna get caught. They cannot find this again. So they try to blend in, and then at one point they like make a run for it. They're like, okay, we gotta get the hell out of here. So then our main couple, obviously, they all get separated, by the way. I don't know where they end up, I can't remember. I think they go to like some other part of Factionless, or they go back to Amity, I can't remember, but the rest of the abnegation kind of like all scatter. But our main trio, which is now gonna be Caleb, who's Triss's brother, Triss and Tobias, they all run to a train, and on the train there is Edward, who was the initiate from the first book, who got stabbed in the eye, who ended up being factionless, because this train is also riddled by factionless. They have a little bit of tension there, and then Tobias is like, okay, I'm Tobias Eaton, you gotta take me to my mom. And this is a thing because apparently his mom was supposed to be dead. Like they attended, Triss remembers attending to his mother's funeral. So she's like, wait, what? What do you mean, your mother? So they go to Tobias' mother, and because she is now the leader of Dauntless, she's been living there for years, and like, yeah, they kind of had a few talks. Like she did reach out to Tobias, but he just didn't want her really. He was generally mad that he left him with his abusive father alone. So he's mad at her. She's just kind of like, I want you to come join me. We're factionless. We're gonna overthrow Erudite and get rid of the faction system. Come join me. We can do it with you. We need you. And he's like, yeah, I don't know, but thanks for letting us crash here for a while. They also learn that where the rest of the Dauntless is, because Dauntless is basically parted, I want to say parted in the middle, but basically they've divided into two. The ones that work with Erudite and the ones who have like gone on the run, basically, and they're with the Kandor, which are the faction that tells the truth. They also, while they're at the factionless, they learn kind of like how factionless live and how there's like a ton of them, which they weren't expecting, and how they're not like kind of all scattered and harmless. They're like a huge legion of people that are fed, that are well, that are organized. And on top of that, Evelyn, who's Tobias's mother, she has been counting up how many divergents there are. So they have the highest count of divergent population of like the whole faction system. Triss and Tobias, they kind of go, okay, we're gonna go to Kandor to meet the rest of the Dauntless. Caleb kind of says, yeah, I'm gonna go back to Abnegation. He's got a school crush that is technically there. He wants to see if he can help. He's kind of like badly desperate, and Triss is kind of like, I don't want to let you go, but okay. He goes, and they go off to Kandor, and they get arrested while walking in because apparently Janine, the leader of Erudite, has been spreading propaganda saying that they were the responsible ones for the simulation. Like, they're the reason that everything was attacked, that abnegation was attacked. They ran the whole thing, and now they're on the run, and you should, like, take them. So they're about to take them to Erudite, but Tobias goes, okay, put us under the truth simulation, you give us the trial, and we will tell you the truth because this is a lie. Tobias goes under the simulation, and he proves that, like, no, we weren't running the simulation. I was under the simulation, but then Triss snapped me out of it, and we took the data and we ran for it. He ultimately ends up confessing that he fell in love with Triss during the initiation period. Like, he was about to, like, up and leave Dauntless, but then he met Triss, and he was like, I fell in love with her, and I couldn't leave her there, so I stayed for longer. So he knew that Dauntless were going to end up attacking abnegation with the help of Erudite. So it's also a sweet moment. I love it so much. Triss goes under the truth serum. She realizes she can fight it off, but she still tells, but it's harder than she thought it would be. But she manages to fight off the serum, but she still ends up telling the truth because she's been dragging this guilt of not having told anyone of that she killed Will. And she ends up telling it in front of Tobias and also Christina, who's her best friend, who was also Will's girlfriend. So obviously Christina's mad at her because she's, you killed my boyfriend, so what are you, I'm not going to talk to you, even though he was under simulation and was trying to kill her too. And she's like, I didn't want to do this is awful. And she just feels really alone, so she gets a lot closer to her Dauntless born friends. So that would be Araya, Marlene, and Lynn. So the thing about these three characters is I love them so much. Like, kind of all the Dauntless characters I do really like, and I wish they got more time, more development in the book, because they are honestly just so fascinating. Araya is just like this happy, smiley person who's a trickster, prankster kind of guy. Marlene is supposed to be this just like bubbly, happy person, like super happy all the time. And then Lynn is very much just a grumpy girl who kind of badass but still kind of like grumpy. So she's like making friends. She spends a lot of time with them because she feels alone. She doesn't really want to be with Tobias right now because she didn't want to tell him the fact that she killed Will. Like, she felt guilty about it and she was scared that he wouldn't look at her the same, which is sweet, kind of. I didn't like Triss throughout this whole book. She annoys me a lot throughout the book. She makes some questionable decisions, but we're just gonna ignore that for the sake of this book for now. And during one of these random nights, Erudite come with Dauntless and they start attacking everyone in the building and they start shooting at them. And at first she thinks like they're killing people, but no, they're actually just like injecting a serum, like a metal kind of like pad. So everyone has like simulations inside them and they don't really realize it, like serum simulation serum. I don't know what it's called. They all fall asleep because they throw these gas canisters, and she wakes up because she's like, wait, what? We're not all dead, they're all just asleep. And she also finds Araya, who's also divergent, which I feel like he didn't have to be divergent. Like, why is he divergent? Why? Like, I feel like there was no need to add him into divergent other than the sake of him being awake randomly, or like we wanted to put more people to be divergent. But yeah, so he's divergent, she finds that, and then she kind of goes, okay, you gotta warn everyone else. I'm gonna go to the floor where they all are, because apparently they're like looking for divergent. So anyone who's awake throughout this whole like sleeping gas thing, anyone who's awake is divergent and they're harboring divergent. So she goes down, she rescues this little girl randomly. She like tells her, you gotta get away from here. And then she gets into a fight with Eric, who is the former, I don't know what to really call him, but he was one of the leaders in Dauntless, who was like the bad guy in the first book. So she gets in a fight with him and he's about to kill her until Tobias arrives to save the day, and they hold Eric up on trial. They're like, you gotta die because you've basically been a traitor to our faction and you've killed multiple of other people and you're a coward. And they shoot him. Tobias shoots him. And there's a problem throughout the book that because she shot Will, she can't touch a gun, so she's not really defending herself, and she keeps putting herself in these situations and she can't really protect herself anymore because she can't even handle a gun. So Tobias is getting mad at her all the time, like, what is wrong with you? And now he knows that it's because of Will and stuff, but at the same time it's like, okay, fine, but don't put yourself in like dangerous situations. Like, go to the floor where they're looking for divergent. What is wrong with you? She's like, no, but I was like trying to sacrifice myself. I'm fine. Like, I want to like be sacrificial like my parents. I want to die for someone else. It's fine. It's bravery. And it is just kind of like pigheadedness for me, at least. But anyway, the Candor and the Dauntless don't see eye to eye with what happened, because like the Candor leader's like, you just didn't kill anyone, so we should probably talk to them. Maybe they'll just like call off, like it's fine. I'll negotiate with Janine and it'll be fine. I'll fix this all out. And the Dauntless are kind of like, yeah, that's not gonna work, but fine, go ahead, do whatever you can. So during this time, there's been a lot of talk because Tobias, under the truth simulation, did kind of say that his father hit him when he was a kid. Now all the Dauntless know, and they call him a coward. So he's like, well, I'm not a coward, let me show them. And he beats Marcus, who's there for some reason. I forgot why. He wasn't there the whole time, so I don't know why. Marcus is there, so he beats up Marcus and Triss has to pull him out, and now all of them have respect for him now. They're like, you're not afraid anymore of him, that's cool, so you're gonna be our new leader. Along with Tori and along with someone else random. They also nominate Triss, but she's like, yeah, I don't want it. Because I'm divergent. I can't be only Dauntless. There's still a lot of fights with Triss and Four. They're fighting all the time. So during the negotiations between Jack Kang and Janine, they sneak into it and he's like, you don't have to go, and she's like, I'm going, which is fine, but I feel like the way she says it kind of just makes her feel like a young child, like stop. Yes and no, like she was irritating. I get what the decision she wanted to make, but it's at the same time she's really irritating throughout the whole book. I'm not sure if it's done on purpose or not, but anyway, throughout the negotiations, like Janine doesn't even show up, but someone embodying Janine, so like Janine is speaking throughout a different body. So Triss is like, well, Janine's got to be around here somewhere, she's got to be close to the host. And during, like, when she realizes this, Lynn, she shoots Max, who was another Dauntless leader, who is featured a little bit in the first book, but he's like not that much. And they also see Peter, who during this whole attack at Amity back at the beginning of the book, he kind of like got separated and we never heard from him again, but apparently he went to Erudite and turned bad. Is anyone surprised? Not really. Tobias accuses Triss of being suicidal. Like, you keep putting yourself in these dangerous situations. Like, they get out fine, by the way, from that negotiation, but they're like, you are annoying me. Like, what is wrong with you? And she's like, well, she brings up again, like, it's my parents, like, I want to die like them, I want to have my life to have meaning. Like, she really does have a change of tone in this book. But anyway, because the Dauntless and the Candor don't really see eye to eye of, like, what to do in light of the situation, because Jack Kang's like, well, I gotta give up the divergent people, like, I can't stay here, I gotta do these things, because he's essentially powerless against Janine and on the Dauntless, Erudite Dauntless, I don't know what's. He's like, well, I'm just gonna agree to her terms and hopefully she'll leave me alone. And the Dauntless are like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. So they go back to the Dauntless compound, and the reason they left is because, like, there's a bunch of cameras everywhere, so their solution is to just have a paintball party and, like, just throw paint everywhere on the cameras. During this time, their stay at Dauntless, the simulation that was injected in them while they got shot in Candor gets turned on for 3 people. So we have one little girl that I don't think she's like has a name or anything. We have Hector, which is Lynn's little brother, and then we've got Marlene, who is our girl, who's our happy flower. They all 3 are like on the ledge about to kill themselves, and the Divergent need to give themselves up or more deaths will follow. This is where kind of like Christina and Triss make up, because they're like, we can't have to snap them out of the simulation, and we can't, and so they end up being able to save Hector and the little girl, and it really drives Triss mad, because she's like, the little girl is too young to die, which scares her because it means Marlene is old enough, and she also doesn't want to like have Hector die, because Shauna, who is Lynn's older sister, just got shot and they're not really sure if she's gonna wake up. So in her mind it was like Lynn cannot lose her little brother, she can't lose another one, so what am I supposed to do? And it all happens very quickly, but basically she ends up falling, and Christina kind of forgives Triss, is like, okay, I get it, they were in a simulation, you couldn't really do anything about it, so I forgive you, kind of, so let's start talking like normal friends. And the whole time Triss is like, oh my gosh, the Divergent have to give themselves up, I'm going to give myself up, I'm going to go to Erudite, in the hopes of like everyone else being okay, because she just wants to protect everyone. So Tobias kind of goes to her and is like, you cannot do this, you know that, right? And she's like, why not? And she says, well, you can't, you cannot leave, I don't want you to leave, you cannot do this is stupid, we are not going to let you go. And he makes her promise that she won't go, and she does promise. And then they have a nice little romantic moment, which is great. And then she up and leaves and is like, well, I'm still gonna. She ends up going to Erudite anyway, and she basically gives herself up. And basically what they want to do there is study her brain, because they want to make simulations that will, same goal as before really, they want to make simulations that will control the Divergent. So they want kind of like the strongest Divergent possible to be able to, if they can control her, they can control all the Divergent. And also, she finds out that Caleb, her brother, is there too. So when he said he was going back to abnegation, he was actually just going back to erudite, and basically helped Janine get to her death. Like he knew that Janine wanted a strong divergent, and he told her, well, my sis got like 3 in the aptitude test, 3 factions, which is unheard of, so she must be really strong-willed. And apparently Tobias also breaks in there at one point to save her. I don't know if it's to save her or just to die with her or something, but he breaks in also to get to her, and she's like, you were not supposed to come here. What are you doing, you idiot? Like, I left because I wanted to protect you guys, and you come here to die as well. Like, it makes no sense. She already knew that she was going to die, like they were going to execute her, but they were studying her brain. But apparently, like, now they're like, well, we're just going to kill you now. So they speed up the execution, and lo and behold, they like fake her death, and it is because of Peter. Why? Because Peter cannot handle the fact that she saved his life back in Amity way back, because she like pushed him away from a shotgun and she didn't even realize it was him. So he was like, well, I can't have a stiff having saved my life, or like I can't be in debt to anyone. And he saves her, and so they break out of erudite and they go back to the factionless, where the factionless and the dauntless good guy dauntless have like formed a group, and they're like going to storm erudite. And she's like, I don't think this is such a good idea. I don't want to destroy a whole faction. Like, not all erudite guys are bad. We're gonna pretend that it's the same day, or that we don't notice the fact that I've completely changed outfit. Not really, I'm still wearing black, but we're just gonna pretend that this hasn't happened, okay? My camera cut off last night and I just didn't finish filming. I didn't want to. She talks to Marcus and realizes that the information they were about to release it to the rest of the society. That's why Janine attacked when she did, because she wants the information. So she's like, okay, so this information is important. If erudite was willing to like kill abnegation for it, it is important. Which, honestly, all of this makes no sense, because, like, why? There's gotta be stealthier ways to do it other than kill a whole faction because you want information, or you don't want information released. So she's kind of figured that out, and also she's stuck kind of, like, at the compound. She isn't gonna go with the rest of the Dauntless and the Factionless to attack erudite, because low-key doesn't really want to do that, because she's kind of like, I don't want to destroy a whole faction. She teams up with Triss and a few of the erudites, and a few of the Amity to kind of stop this whole thing from happening. They want to get the information, and she is siding with Marcus. So she has conflicting feelings about this, because obviously she's siding with her boyfriend's father. And also Kara is a very interesting character. She is Will's sister. So she's kind of like, I don't like this girl, but okay, I'll help her. And she's really interesting, and I wish they'd put her in the movies, because she is really a good character. I loved her a lot. Go into erudite, all stealth mode-y. A few of them die along the way. I feel so mean saying that, but yeah, a few die along the way. What a character that we got like no time, honestly. And he was so sweet. His name was like Fernando or something like that. I can't remember. And they get in. She gets up to Janine and she's like, give me the information. Give it to me. I need to know it. But before she gets into it completely, Tori comes in and she kills Janine. And she's like, well, now I can't get the information. And Tori's like, girl, why are you trying to help her? Why are you not trying to kill her? Why are you being a traitor to us? Not knowing obviously about the whole information thing. And so they get caught, and she doesn't win. Like, she loses this battle. She doesn't get to kill Janine. She doesn't get the information. And now Tobias knows that she was working with Marcus, and he's kind of like, what is happening here? Then our baby Tobias goes up and with the help of Caleb gets the information and releases it to the world. And he's like, well, okay, fine, you were right. And the information apparently is that this huge secret that they were trying to keep, and that abnegation was about to release into the world, was that they are actually an experiment, and that once they have enough divergent people, they should go out, because the people outside the wall desperately need their help. And that's where the book stops. Like, it literally ends saying, and then the shouting begins. So I guess it's supposed to leave you off on a cliffhanger, but I didn't really feel like it's a cliffhanger. It's kind of stupid to me. Let's just talk about the book in itself. I gave this one 3 stars because it's a huge step down from the first one. I really don't like it as much as Divergent. I feel like no one does. Obviously, this is kind of like fine, it's the second book, we get it. You're setting up like the grand finale, but it's very stupid. And I feel like there's not much of a clear plot, because this whole secret information was like there's a trickle of it at the beginning and then it becomes a big thing at the end, but it's not like she's continuously trying to get the information. And there's just a lot of things that happen that feel kind of like isolated events and nothing driving a proper plot forward. Like, it all just seems kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but I just don't love the plotting of this. I feel like Divergent has a much more clear, this one feels very isolated, the events, and I don't love it. Obviously, I don't like Tris in this one. She becomes so annoying, and I get it. She's dealing with the fact that she killed her friend. I get it, okay. But stop being so annoying, girl. I always hated Tris in this book. She gets better in Allegiant, if I remember correctly, but I didn't like her in this book. She was so annoying. I always thought that she was acting so out of character. I feel like if you read this one and then read Divergent again, you'll be like, these are two different people. Which, yes, okay, it symbolizes her growing, but she's just annoying. She's like really mean in this. But there are a few moments with Tobias and her, but mainly Tobias goes through it in this movie. Honestly, he really has to deal with a lot. Like, his father's back in his life, he's got his mother, another tyrant trying to take over, he's being used by everyone, her girlfriend's like acting odd the whole time, like keeping secrets from him. He's just trying to make everyone happy. He doesn't know what to do, and he is led to believe he just wants his parents to love him, and he doesn't know how to forgive, and he's trying to deal with all of his issues, and he can't. Because they won't let him. I do really like Loki. Is one of my favorite characters. Like, she already gets more screen time, I guess, than Will, and she's very interesting because she's like an erudite who, yes, did believe in the propaganda that erudite was spreading about abnegation, but then kind of like saw through the lies and was like, well, this cannot happen. I don't want it to happen. And she is very much the point of where like people realize that the whole faction is not bad. Like, just all abnegation aren't good, all erudite aren't bad. And I do love the scenes we get with the other characters, the Dauntless Born, so Araya, Marlene, and Lynn. We get a lot more of them. We get a lot more of all these side characters. I do love Araya. I feel like Marlene should have gotten more time because I didn't care about her enough to like feel bad about her, but it was like to drive the plot forward of how do I get Tris to erudite headquarters, let's just kill someone. It feels weird. But yes, that's Insurgent. And my thoughts on the movie. Granted, the book is not great, but the movie is so weird. I feel like they made a good choice in trying to get, well, let's just turn this information into a literal box. But I don't know why there has to be a simulation. Like, why? It does make sense and it doesn't. I feel like they had potential. It had potential. The fact that they were changing it so much and trying to make it better and trying to make it more cohesive, like the plot, I feel like, yes, okay, good job, but the execution of it was really odd. Like, I don't like the fact that most of the time we're spent in simulations. I don't like that. I feel like give the simulations a rest. And I think it might have been because they wanted to have more special effects. I don't really see the point, honestly. I don't like the fact that randomly, I think Araya gets a casting change because he's not really mentioned in the first movie, but you can kind of tell if you've read the books that this guy is supposed to be Araya, but then they changed him to a different character. And like these second lead characters, like Marlene, Araya, and Lynn, get no screen time. Zeke isn't even a part of it. Neither is Shauna, who's Lynn's older sister. Hector, yes, does make an appearance, but like that's it. I don't like the fact that all the second characters are barely in it. Like, I really don't like it at all. And they also don't show that like Tris can take off the simulation of like the truth serum, I guess. They can't tell that she can. Like, they don't say it ever, which makes no sense. Kind of like a joke of a movie, like I don't really get it, but I feel like the acting makes up for it. I do still like Peter in it because he's funny. Tobias, still amazing in that movie. And Tris isn't nearly as irritating in the movie as she is in the book, which I don't know if I like that or not, because obviously she's meant to be very different in the second book, I think, but I like her more how she's portrayed in the movie as like not that crazy. She's just actually trying to help people. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on Insurgent. So let's get into Allegiant. Okay, so I finished Allegiant and I think I give it 3 stars, 3 or 4, definitely not a 5 stars. And it's very much, the reason I gave it such a high rating has more to do with the fact that I love the ending chapters. We'll get into that later, but let's just kind of recap what happens, because this book, like, I remember it being crazy, but I don't remember it being this crazy. You know what I mean? I want to mention that we do get 2 POVs. We get Tobias's POV and we also have Tris' POV. That already makes it a much better book, in my opinion, than Insurgent, because I love seeing Tobias's thoughts. Like, come on. We start off right where we left off from the last book. which is appreciated because then you're not kind of like trying to figure out what's happened. But anyway, Christina and Triss are in prison because they helped try to stop the attack on Erudite, and obviously the factionalists were like, no. But they're also discussing about who Edith Pryor is, because if we remember correctly, Triss is called Beatrice Pryor, so she's somehow related to this woman who was like the start of the experiment. Triss obviously wants to go outside the fence to figure out who she is, what's happening, what's out there. And now that we got the message saying like you should go outside the fence, she's like, well, I have to go outside the fence. But yeah, and now the whole city is ruled under Evelyn and the factionless. Like there's no more factions anymore, and now they all have different jobs, like everyone can do anything, but it's still kind of like forced onto them. Evelyn is also not letting anyone leave the city, which is kind of sus. There's going to be a trial for Triss, and they're like trying to figure out how the hell do we get out of this. We're going to inject the truth serum, but I can lie during the truth serum. So she manages to lie her way through the serum, saying it was all Marcus's fault. He didn't really tell me what was going on. He led me to believe, I don't know what she uses, but like she somehow blames it all on Marcus, and like that she was innocent, that she didn't know what she was doing. We also, from Tobias's POV, learned that he is kind of torn. He doesn't know whether to go or to stay, because he feels like, yes, we should sort out the problems in our own city before like trying to go outside, but he also kind of is curious to see what's outside, so he doesn't know what to do. And Evelyn here thinks that Tobias is 100% dedicated to her, so that's something. He's kind of like, you're kind of sounding too much like Janine, like what are you doing? And then that's where he learns about the Allegiant, which are a group of people who want to bring the factions back, who are against Evelyn's rule. Hence the title, I guess. And his job, he's been tasked with the job of trying to rule out who these people are and get rid of them. But he's like not 100% sure if he wants to do that. Triss and Tobias forgive each other, by the way. This is kind of like really quickly. Yeah, you worked with my dad, but it's okay because apparently you were right the whole other movie, the whole other book. You were right, whatever. Factionalists go and destroy the choosing bowls, like the choosing ceremony bowls, which were in the first book. And Tobias is kind of like, I don't know what to do. I don't want them to destroy this, because this was like my first time of rebelling against my father. And then also like a whole fight breaks out, and Edward, who was Evelyn's like lackey, he dies, and Evelyn's really sad about this because he was more of a son than Tobias ever was, which is hard to know. We also get a conversation between Triss and Christina about like how many people are left from the initiation transfers that are still good, and they pop up Myra, who was like Edward's girlfriend back in the first book, but she never shows up again. We don't really know what happened to her, if she was like died, if she's in factionless somewhere else. Like we don't know anything about her. Like we know nothing about her, and it's being brought up now as if she was a character that we knew anything about, and she isn't. And I'm always curious, like what happened to Myra? I would like to know that. Triss gets kind of kidnapped, not really kidnapped, she gets like blindfolded or something by the Allegiant, and they kind of just want to tell her, can you come to a meeting with us? And she's like, yeah, sure, okay. But you didn't need to like blindfold me for it. And they're like, yeah, sorry, we didn't know what your allegiance was. Now we also get Caleb's trial, and Caleb is also on trial because he was working with Janine and he was working with Erudite, and so he's gonna have a harder time trying to get out of it. And Triss is really conflicted between if she wants to save him or not, because he literally led her to her death, and he did nothing about it. So yeah, we also find out that Kara with Johanna are the leaders of Allegiant. Johanna is the spokesperson for Amity, and what they want to do is they want to obviously overthrow Evelyn, and they also want to send people outside the wall. So there's this whole like talk about who to send over the wall, and they finally decided some people and when to do it and all that. They do save Caleb, basically. Like Chris says, like, well, I can't let him die. He is my family. I will do what my brother didn't, and I will save him. And then they have this whole thing about trying to leave the city. Tori dies trying to leave, which is really sad. She gets shot, and it's kind of chaotic how she explains it in the book. Like they kind of run through the night, they get these trucks, and then Joanna drops them off, and then they leave, blah 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 blah. And we also find out that the Amity, Joanna tells them that in Amity they also have the abnegation serum, and their serum is memory wipes. So they were tasked with whoever like left the city and went further out than they were supposed to and then came back or whatever, like they were tasked of like, you're having your memory swiped, you can't remember anything, and that's when they first find out about the memory serum. So then they manage to leave, they're outside the city, and they meet Amar. Now who the hell is Amar? Good question, because he has not popped up in any of the other books, but apparently he was For's initiation instructor, and he helped him kind of hide the fact that he was divergent, but he couldn't hide his own divergent, and so everyone thought that he killed himself, And then 4 always thought that like they'd killed him on purpose, like the erudite people. And now we find out like he's not even dead. He's out here the whole time. And so Amar, along with this other girl called Zoe, they're like, okay, you guys got to come to this borough of genetic welfare or something like that. We're good guys. Come along. You don't trust us? That's fine. They show her Triss a photo of her mother with like these people. So she's kind of like, wait, what? My mom was from here? You knew my mother? How is this possible? So then they end up going to the borough, obviously. And apparently the borough is what monitors these experiments, because Chicago isn't the only experiment. There's like multiple experiments, multiple cities, and the factions are the kind of system that has worked the best, and their whole goal is to get non-damaged people. It's insane, honestly. They meet David, who is the leader of this borough thing, and he tells them about like damaged genes and that there was a purity war because basically humanity went kind of crazy when all Gattaca and like tried to modify people, and apparently that led to a war because I don't know why. Like it's not really explained, but it basically ended up being that there was a war, which I still don't understand why. Like what was like the catalyst? What was it? Like damaged people against damaged genes against like pure genes? But I thought the whole point was like to get people who were pure, technically, to not have these dishonesty, cowardice, all that kind of thing. But obviously, like once you take those away, the other things happen, and it's just it's a whole mess. It doesn't really make sense, so I'm not really going to try to explain it. But basically, we know that the experiments, their ultimate goal is to get people with pure genes, which is what the divergent are, and then everyone else is damaged genes. So obviously that's kind of like a blow, like oh my god, people are called damaged. It's a weird way of classifying people, but okay, fine. We also find out that Tori's brother, who we also thought had died because he was divergent, is also in the borough. He's friends with Amar, which is sad because they're like, yeah, your sister died on the way here. And then it's kind of like never really mentioned again, so yes. Yeah, Matthew, who is a pure gene, who's like a scientist working with the bureau, and he gives Triss the Natalie file, which is basically her journals. So she gets to find out all about her mother life there, how she was from the fringe, which I also don't understand. It is like this. So because, okay, so like the world makes no sense. This is why I don't like it. There is a United States of America. That still exists, and there's still cities, but it's like everything's being monitored, and then everyone is technically the same, but apparently they treat the genetically pure people better than the GDs, which are genetically damaged. And so because they can get away with it so often like that, they leave these cities and live kind of like in camps around everywhere else. And so the genetic bureau goes out and kidnaps children to get them to live in the bureau to give them a better life. And they wipe their memories, so like they're just brought up thinking like, you're genetically damaged, help us make this experiment. And it works for some people. Also, like not all the cities of experiments like work. Some of them failed, and then those people kind of get misplaced, and they have to put them, some leave some go to the bureau, some go to the cities. It's a whole mess, and I do not understand it. It's like nothing's really explained. How is there a United States of America? What's the rest of the world like? There's just like little details, a lot of like plot holes that I don't understand. Why, like how do you get so much funding to grab multiple cities and make them into your experiment? How does that work? And I don't believe that like they can control so many people. Like everyone would be okay with it. And anyway, we learned that there have been uprisings in different cities. There was an uprising in Chicago, and they wiped everyone's memory to like forget about it. That's why the sector where the factionalists live, like the buildings are not okay, they're like falling down. But I always thought that was like the dystopian part. It doesn't really matter. Basically they test their genes, and apparently Triss is divergent, Triss is genetically pure, but Dwyas on the other hand isn't, which makes no sense, which kind of is weird, because he can resist simulations, but he's not actually divergent. He's just an abnegation who is very good in Dauntless. It's an anomaly apparently. And so he gets kind of like frustrated. Okay, so I'm damaged, how does that make me damaged? And then he's like, well, I gotta stand up for the damaged people, like we cannot live like this. He goes on his whole thing, and he's also dealing with a lot. My poor Tobias is dealing with so much all the time. There's a trial obviously for Marcus, and he doesn't know what he wants. He doesn't know whether he wants Marcus to die, whether he wants him to live. He doesn't know what to feel. He doesn't know if he wants to watch it. Then we get some more journals about Natalie, where we learn that she grew up, she was one of these people who lived on the fridge. I think I went on a whole rant and forgot where I was going to go with that rant. But anyway, basically Natalie, Triss's mom, she was born in the fringe, and they saved her, kidnapped her, saved her, whatever you want to call it. And they told her, oh my gosh, you're like almost pure, like you should come work with us, like we can give you a better life. And she lived at the bureau for a few years, and then because Janine's ancestor was starting to hunt down the divergent, the people at the bureau were like, what do we do? Like, we cannot let this happen. The whole point of this experiment is to get more divergent people, because that's the good people, that's the pure people. Natalie transfers to the city, and because she already had tattoos, they put her in Dauntless, and she lives there for like a year, and then she transfers. The plan was that she transferred to Erudite, but she fell in love with the husband, Andrew. They both decided, let's just go to Abnegation, and she did her work from there, and then like that's how she ended up where she was. But she still kind of like helped, and she always knew that this was a whole experiment. So we also meet Nita, who is a genetically damaged person from a different city, a different experiment that like had to shut down, and she decided to stay in the bureau to work. And she's not happy about the situation. She doesn't like how GEDs are treated, and so she talks to Tobias about that there's a plan, like, come with me and I'll teach you how bad it is for GEDs, really. And so they go to the Fringe, and that's where he kind of witnesses what it's like there, which it sounds like just a weird version of a Wild Wild West. Like, I can't believe that that's safer than these cities where they're like, yeah, I'm treated unfairly, but how is it safer than being where they can literally kill you? It's a whole thing. I don't understand it. Also, Christina and Araya throughout the book kind of just disappear in this book, really disappear. They apparently, it's described that they just go off on their own, and like Tris thinks that there's something there, but if there isn't, they're just friends. But yeah, and then they're barely mentioned. They barely have a part in this book. Tobias ends up telling Tris about like, okay, so I met this girl, Nita, and she's telling me that there's this plan to kind of like take a little bit of the Bureau's power away from them, and they have a plan and they want to talk to me about it. How about you come along with me? And so they do. They hear the plan out, and Tris goes, I don't trust her. Like, yeah, you're doing a good thing, but like, I don't trust her. I think there's more to the story than she's telling. Like, because they say that they want to take away the memory serum, but really they want to steal the death serum. Also, at the same time, Tris learns that the serum that was in the first book that managed to make all the Dauntless kind of like drones for Erudite, that was supplied by the Bureau, because like they were okay with it, because not all the Divergent are in Abnegation. They are more Divergent in the faction list. They went, okay, fine, let's have them kill Abnegation, it's fine, we don't care. So she's kind of like, what the hell, you guys made me kill my best friend, you were the reason my parents are dead, you're the reason where the city's in this mess in the first place then. By the way, Tris kind of like opts out of Nita's plan, but Tobias is all for it. He's like, I don't care what you say, Tris, I think she's doing good by me, by us, by the GDs. We need to do something. We need to take the power away from them for some reason. Take it to granted that he's been there for like literally 3 days or something like that. Like, he's not been there long enough to really feel that he's been not properly treated, I guess. It makes no sense to me, but okay. And the part of that plan was to set off some bombs to distract people, and so the Nita and some other people could go and get the death serum. So during those explosions, Araya is very close to them, and he gets into a coma. Also, when they try to get the serum, David's there apparently, and Tris kind of goes in after them going like, what the hell have you done? You've almost killed my best friend. He ends up being in a coma. That's a whole other thing. They basically, like, she goes to them and they can't get a password out of David that they needed, and so they kind of fail in their mission completely. And Tobias feels really bad apparently that he got his like best friend's little brother in hurt. So Tris is mad at Tobias, obviously. She doesn't know if she can ever forgive him. We also got like pretty much everyone who's on like Team Chicago, or like we're from the city of Chicago, are pretty mad at him. He feels terrible about what he's done. He feels like he should have listened to Tris, obviously. Oh, and they let him off basically because they were saying, well, of course, it's okay. You're genetically damaged, so you don't really know what you're doing. It's fine. Like, it's really weird how they deal with it. But anyway, we find out that in the city of Chicago, things are kind of like heating up. We have Marcus goes... Oh, right, because Marcus got off trial. I'm doing a terrible job at this recap. I am so sorry, guys. But Marcus, the trial with Evelyn ended up happening, and she basically exiled him. He didn't really leave the city. He just went up and tried to join up Joanna in their allegiance, and he's like, you need me. We can get the guns because of me. I know how to rule cities. I have a lot of influence. I was leader of the city. Like, you can use my help. And she's like, fine, okay. They're teaming up. They want to take over arms and like get Evelyn out of there. We just kind of get little snippets of that city of Chicago anymore, which I don't really like. I wish they'd like go more into depth about like what's happening really there. Because Tris was there and she basically held David at gunpoint, being like, you guys gotta get out of here. Back when like Nita was trying to get the serum, she didn't really save David or anything. She was just kind of like there for her own purpose, but she still managed to impress David that you wouldn't let anyone, like your sentimental thoughts of like how much you like me, and get in the way of like trying to get people what they want. I don't know if I explained that properly, but anyway, Tris essentially is now becoming a leader. David wants to train her up in a way he never could with Natalie, essentially, is what I think. But because David also had a crush on Natalie, she finds out that because Chicago is literally about to have a war, that the borough's plan is to just wipe their memories and start anew and bring the factions back. Tris doesn't feel like this is the correct answer. That means like all her friends and family that are still in Chicago won't remember her, and neither will like Christina's family, Uriah's family, Tobias's friend. They come up with this whole plan, everyone from Chicago, with the help of Matt, who has his own reasons for wanting to like get the bureau out of their stop kind of like spreading this propaganda of like GD is damaged and the GPs are amazing and they can't do any wrong. The plan is, let's immune ourselves to the memory serum. Let's try to go to this Chicago city. Tobias goes over there because he wants to stop his parents from killing each other, essentially, and they also want to get Uriah's family out because they've just found out that there's no brainwaves, so they've got to unplug him. And Tobias has to go down there to be like, yeah, I kind of ended up not on purpose killing your son and your little brother. So that's a fun conversation. Christina goes there because she wants to get her family kind of like immune to the serum as well, to the memory serum. And they also plan on changing the memory serum not to go across like Chicago. They want to put it on the bureau. I don't know how they do this, honestly. I think it's like they do it in gas, but I don't know how. Like, do they really have, is it so easy to like transfer the filters? It's not really explained. I don't remember it being explained, so I don't know. To change the filter like of where the serum goes, it's a suicide mission because the death serum will be released once someone tries to get into it, and no one can survive the death serum from Iridite or something like that. And so they're like, well, who's gonna like sacrifice themselves? And they look around the room and go, Caleb, you basically led your sister to her death, so you can. And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever. She doesn't know how to feel about it yet. And during this whole time, Tobias is also thinking, what parent should I save? What parent? He wants to wipe one of his parents' memories so like the war stops in Chicago, so there isn't this whole revolution happening. Because even if they do like not put the memory serum on Chicago, they still have like a revolution or a war about to, like a war that's about to happen in that city. So he kind of knows that he's got to save one of his parents, and he doesn't know which one to go to. Also find out that Peter just wants to forget completely. He injects himself with the memory, like he doesn't get himself immune to the memory serum just in case, and like later on he will get the memory serum. He wants to just forget who he is because he feels bad, because he's like looking at the world and he's like, we're so small, nothing I've ever done has any meaning. I just want to forget and start anew because I know I won't be able to, which is a coward way out of it, but okay, whatever. Again, Peter has barely been in this book as well. So Tobias, when he goes into Chicago, manages to stop the revolution because he gives his mother the option of, hey, you can be my mother, or you can be this tyrant and go to war against our dad, my father, and like essentially lose, and I will wipe the serum from you. Like he kind of gives this option, and she goes, well, I choose you, my son. And it's all happy flowers for them. Like he's like, oh my gosh, she chose me for the first time ever, blah blah blah. And so they manage to go to like where they're confronting Marcus and Joanna, and Marcus shows his true colors of like, no, I want to be the leader of the city, I'm not going to agree to your terms, which are reasonable terms. And Joanna's like, yeah, you don't make the decision, I am the leader of Allegiant, get away. We are taking this plea deal because I don't want any war spill, because she's not a fan of Ireland. The problem in Chicago is resolved, and they've been there so long that they realize, oh my gosh, the memory sim room hasn't gone off, so basically we're safe. They did it. They put this memory sim in the bureau. So like, let's go back to the bureau, and we find out, or like this is happening kind of simultaneously essentially, but Tris goes in place of Caleb because she's like, I'm not gonna let my brother die for this. This is not what he wants to do. He's not doing it for a selfless reason like my parents. He's doing it because he is scared and because we're basically forcing him to do it. And she does manage to fight off the death serum, which is something that's never explained, why she can fight off every single serum ever given to her. But she can fight it off, and apparently that isn't what kills her though. David does. David shoots her, but she still manages to like get the memory serum all through the bureau, and so David doesn't even remember what he's done. And then and she passes away because she was shot. And then we get the best part of the book. Best written part of the book. It's not the best part of the book. This sounds really sadistic saying this, but basically the final chapters are my favorite. They are the ones where Tobias finds out that Tris is dead, and he is impossible to he is inconceivably filled with grief. He doesn't want to go on. He wants to forget everything at some point. They are heartbreaking. Those chapters are heartbreaking. He talks about the first time he saw her, the first time he saw her in Dauntless, the times he saw her in Abnegation, how much she loved her, how he wanted to spend the rest of his life with her, how nothing's ever going to compare. It's so sad. I was on the verge of tears. I love those chapters. They are the best. Oh, I love Tobias, and I love the love he gives Tris. It is insanely good. That's how like it ends. We do get like a weird epilogue at the end of like him going through the zip line. They end up going back to Chicago. Some of them leave Chicago. There's a new regime there. It all turns out okay. There's a few things that are not explained, like they have to like re-educate everyone in the bureau and re-educate them in a way that they don't think GD people damaged are the cause of everyone's problems. It's more complicated than that, and yeah, that's how the book ends. So yes, let's just get into my thoughts about the book. I think you shouldn't have gone beyond the wall of Veronica Roth. I think you should have, there was enough conflict and there was enough kind of like storylines that you could have done within the city and within like trying to get the factionalists out of there, out of the control, out of power. There's enough there to make it interesting, because the whole time I was thinking I want to like actually be in Chicago and see how the Allegiant are doing, because I want to see how they ransack guns, how Marcus is dealing with not being 100% the leader, how Evelyn is doing like not having her son around her, having lost Edward but still having to be this like uptight person who has to rule a city when she's never had really the experience and she doesn't really know what she's doing. I would have loved to see that. Instead of going outside of the world and trying to explain a dystopian world which is really clear, which makes no sense, filled with plot holes, I feel like you could have just stayed within the city and it would have been so much better. But yeah, those are my thoughts on Allegiant. I love the final chapters. They make me sob every single time. Now let's talk about the film. The film is very different to the book. Taylor James is the best thing in that film and the only thing in that film. The film feels like a fever dream. I'd never watched it. It's just very bad. A lot of things change. It's kind of left on a weird open ending. They change a lot of the plot points to a point that it doesn't even make sense. And I get it. Like, the book is not good enough to like try to make it better. But they didn't make it better. They just made it more confusing and more kind of like random. I just don't like the film. I feel like everyone doesn't like the third film. Whether you're a fan of the second one or not, like, it's just not a good film. There's a whole point of like detoxifying people that I don't get. Why did they do that? Like, that is so weird. Like, why? It wasn't in the book. I feel like someone had this idea and really wanted to do it because they wanted to try out the CGI effects. They've got ships all of a sudden, which I don't understand, and like there's a place for genetically pure people only, and that's the only place that doesn't look like an absolute desert. Because if you've seen the movie, you'll understand. Providence of all places is like fine. Yeah, it makes no sense. I don't like the movie. I feel like everyone doesn't like the movie, so nothing different here. And now we're going on to the final book, which is the 4 short story collection, which I'm really excited to picking up because 4 is my favorite character. He's the best, so let's just get right into it. We are here to conclude this video. Finally, I did finish and read 4, which is the short story collection that exists within the Divergent world. Let's talk about it, because I'm pretty sure I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, but I've recently read something else that has warped my vision of the series as a whole, but we'll get into that later. This is for the girlies who wanted more about Tobias, because we did not see a lot about there's a lot of things that he explained about his past, but we didn't actually get to see it. So in this one, it does explain kind of like how he got to Dauntless and all that kind of stuff. Also, another thing to note was that Veronica Roth actually originally started writing the story from 4's perspective. So like, she visioned the world and her main character was going to be 4, but she like put that on, she backshelved that idea, and then when she brought
the world back and did Triss as Triss as the main character. She included 4 in that, obviously. So yeah, which I thought was very interesting. So the first part is the transfer. Now in this one we focus on Tobias's life in abnegation and how his mother's left him, how he struggles every day. He is scared of his father. We get to see kind of how abusive his father was and how he really just wants an escape from it. Like, he really doesn't want to be there, and he does take the aptitude test and it does turn out to be abnegation. His father had already kind of like prompted him up to be like, if you're aware during the simulation, you cannot give that off, that is dangerous to say. And the reason for this is because at the time, like, Forward doesn't know this, but Marcus, the father, he's divergent, which isn't really touched upon. I don't know why he was divergent in the first place, but anyway, 4 is like, no, I just got abnegation, and he doesn't really tell him like, yeah, I was aware, but I didn't know that was like off, and no one like told me that it was anything odd. So we also get to see kind of him interact with some of the factionless people who recognize him as Evelyn's son, which is kind of like a sneak peek into what's going to happen. And like, oh my god, because if you've obviously read the story, you know Evelyn is his mother, who's like the leader of factionless, but he thinks she is still dead. And so he decides that, well, I want to like run from my fear, and I want to be fearless, and don't want to be a coward anymore. I need to escape. So he runs off to Dauntless during his choosing day. Wow, I just really messed up my hair. Sorry. But so he runs off to Dauntless, and obviously he betrays his father. But yeah, lo and behold, I don't know kind of like where the cutoff is, but the next story is The Initiate, so I'm just going to jump to that, because in this one we meet Amar, who does play a very, very, very small role in Allegiant, because like he only gets introduced, but he was For's instructor back when For was an Initiate, and he's the one who kind of showed For how to hide his divergentness during the simulations. But the weird thing is, because this is 2 years before the events in Divergent ever take place, so this is when Erudite is starting to make a move and like trying to get Dauntless on their side. So they sneak someone in, and they want someone on the inside as a leader, and that someone is Eric, which we do kind of find out in Divergent, but it's not as clear. In this one it's made very clear. And so obviously Tobias is head to head with Eric, and they're both the best in the class, but obviously our Tobias is much better. But what I want to say is that they go through their fear landscape the first thing when they first arrive, because they're like testing to see if that will make them better at the next stages in the initiation process. And also the initiation process is less eliminatory. So basically no one gets eliminated. I think they all like pass, so that's always great. We also meet Shauna and Zeke, who are his best friends, who also make appearances in the original trilogy, which is good. Yeah, the main focus is like his relationship. Him learning to be with other people is fine, because he has the same struggles as Triss does, in the fact that he comes from a quiet life of like not even socializing, and he socializes even less than Triss ever did, because his father kept him away from all social events, and he was literally called like a weirdo within abnegation. So it's very hard for him to socialize, to make friends, but he does eventually make friends. He does have his own little friendship group. So yes, and he does end up being like the top initiate. And he passes the first stage, I'm pretty sure he passes. But anyway, he passes number 1. He beats Eric, and then stage 2 happens. He's also good at that. And then during stage 2 is when Amar kind of goes, okay, you're divergent. You can't tell anyone this, but you gotta be careful. You gotta like change the way you manipulate the simulation, because people will know you're divergent, and that is dangerous. And literally at that point, someone goes, Eric, apparently he's a snitch, and goes to Erudite and goes, hey, we've got some weirdos here. And so they test For again to see if it's true, and he hides it very well, but they still test Amar, who's also divergent, and Amar wasn't expecting this, and they test him because he didn't like write down, he didn't tell anyone that, hey, there's something weird going on with For simulation. And Amar's like, well, I didn't really see anything, but yeah, the fact that you didn't see that there was anything wrong makes us suspicious, so can you just please do the test? And the next day he ends up at the bottom of the Kazam or something like that, which we will obviously we already know that that's not true, but obviously it does affect For a lot. Like, he's not exactly sad about it, he's not ridden by grief, but he is mad about it because it's such an unfair thing, something that could have easily happened to him, and it was Eric that did it. So he ends up beating up Eric in the scoreboards. So yeah, and then I don't know if it's like right after the sun, I don't know which part it is, but basically we follow the story because I feel like it's very seamless, these 4 short stories. In the next part we kind of see him, he's a fully fledged member of Dauntless and he doesn't know what he's got, like he doesn't know what to do. So Max asks him, hey, you were the first ranked, what do you want? And can you be a, like, what job do you want? Because obviously the ranks kind of also tell them what jobs they are allowed to do. The higher up you rank, the more possibilities, like the more job options you have, the nicer ones that aren't just like guarding the fence or something. So Max asks him if he wants to join this program to become one of the leaders in Dauntless, and he's kind of like on the verge. He doesn't really like, it isn't something that he wants to do, but he's like, yeah, sure, okay. And then he realizes Eric is also there, and the reason Max does this is because he doesn't actually like Eric, even though Eric is the one Erudite assigned, like, hey, we need an Erudite on the inside, this guy is what we're sending you. And Max just doesn't like him and wants to like try on it and see if there's anyone else. And the way they kind of prepare him, like they teach him stuff about programming and stuff about like what are your ideas for the new initiates, like what would you change about the initiation process. And that's where kind of like Eric comes in being like, I think it should be more competitive, blah 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 blah. And Eric and For's just kind of like, I think that is stupid, and what gets him like, but Max kind of goes like, I'm not sure you understood the assignment here. And then For kind of just loses his shit and goes, I don't think that I should be here. Now that's kind of like where that kind of story goes, and he does like asks, hey, I just want to end up working at the control center and I'll be an instructor for the transfers, because he wants to keep an eye on things and doesn't want like the changes of Eric to become true, which doesn't really matter because he still does them. But during this whole time he also gets mysterious messages, and he thinks that they're from Marcus at first, but apparently like he gets mysterious messages saying like, hey, come meet me here where it happened, where you first jumped, or something like that. Kind of a weird thing, a weird cryptic message telling him to go meet some person, and he first thinks it's his father, but he decides to hear him out, and then lo and behold he realizes it's his mother, and his mother wants to recruit him for the faction list. She wants him to come back to him, and he's kind of like, you're alive? You're supposed to be dead. And she's like, yeah, sorry about that. I had to get away. I'm sure you understand. And he's like, no, I don't. Which, fair enough. Like, how would he understand? That's kind of what happens there. He doesn't end up wanting to be with his mother, but he like wants to stay in Dauntless, and she's like, you are divergent. And I can't remember what she says, but she goes like, you don't belong there, you belong with me, I am your mother. And he's like, I belong with this faction, I chose this and I'm going to make it my home. And she's like, you're not 100% Dauntless, you know this, you are not going to like fit in there properly. And he's like, yeah, well, I'm going to give it my best shot. And he leaves it there, and then he also sends a note at the very end going like, okay, not yet, we won't talk yet, I'm not ready to reconnect with you yet, but maybe in the future at some point we can, which is great. Also during this whole time, also he's slowly finding out, while he's working in the control center where they like look up the cameras, because we also learn that there's a ton of cameras in the Dauntless section, he also finds out that the whole plot of Eric and being from Erudite and Erudite kind of being a lot more involved in Dauntless than they should be, because he realizes, oh my gosh, like why would they be testing different types of initiation processes for Dauntless? Like that makes no sense for Dauntless. Like it would be very much an Erudite thing to test different types of initiation processes. And he goes, this is sus. And he finds out like that Eric is from Erudite, and he's very much allegiant to, his allegiance lies within Erudite, and they're trying to do something, and then he realizes they want to attack Abnegation. So he's like, should I warn them? Should I not warn them? I have like conflicting feelings. At first he's like, well, I don't care, they were all bad. But then he thinks, okay. Then talking to his mother, he realizes like they're not all bad. Like they don't deserve to just die for no reason. Not all of them are bad. And he also realizes that it doesn't really matter who he talks, because he would feel like he was betraying his faction if he doesn't warn Abnegation, and he would be betraying Dauntless if he does go warn. But he ends up choosing the one he couldn't live with himself if he didn't do this. So he does go up to like Marcus and says, hey, Marcus is obviously mad, he doesn't want to talk to his son, and he goes, no, I'm trying to warn you that the Dauntless want to attack. And he's like, I don't believe you, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, I warned you. I'm not scared of you anymore. I only came because I felt bad and I think you should know. So bye. He leaves and that is about it. That's all the kind of like backstory we get. And that actually happens kind of like between divergent scenes, so it's kind of hard time-wise where this is going. This little book also includes a few scenes from Divergent, but from Four's perspective. So we get first jumper Triss, which is obviously when Triss jumps down, and he's the first jumper in the initiation process, and he's like, even I didn't jump first, this girl is amazing, she's in grey, I feel like someone pushed her, blah blah blah. And he's just kind of like, oh my gosh, there's someone else from Abnegation here, this is unheard of, this is so weird, this is amazing, blah blah blah. And he kind of like wants to take her under his wing. He wants to take her under his wing, which is so sweet, and I love it so much. Then we also get Careful Triss, which was a scene that I forgot what happened in this one, because it's like one where she's like yelling about how, because Al had just unalived himself and she was kind of like, she didn't know to be mad or sad or what, because she didn't like the guy at the end and he tried to kill her, so she didn't know what to feel, and she was just saying this would never have happened in Abnegation. And he is looking for the mirrors, he is looking for the cameras that he knows are there, and he really just hopes that no one in the control center will actually like listen in on the conversation. And that's why he's saying like Careful Triss, which is a nice kind of like perspective to get, because we do get scenes in the book where he's like looking over to see if there's a camera. And then the final story we get is You Look Good, Triss, which is a scene where he decides which is when he has just found out about Abnegation, that he is going to get attacked by Dauntless. He doesn't know exactly the of like how they'll do it, but he knows it'll happen at some point, and that's what they're planning. And he is in this stage of like, fuck it, I don't care. So he goes and gets drunk with his best friends, and that is why when Triss walks in, he's kind of like, oh my gosh, she looks good, blah blah blah, and he's with his friends, and it's such a nice chapter scene to see in Four's perspective. And he's like, I shouldn't have said that, I'm just gonna go away now, but she must know, because like hopefully she knows this, because yes. And like she sees the tattoos, which are the crows that are flying away. I'm not sure if they're crows or ravens in the end, but it's a good scene, but yes, overall I give this a 5 stars. It is very much because I just love this particular character so much that I adore this book so much, because it's like a bunch of context for this character. We get to see a lot more of him, his thoughts in the favorite scenes of Divergent, and it's great because of that. But yes, that's this book. But now we're going to talk about a little novella that Veronica Roth felt the need to publish, because I need to rant about this, because I did not know this existed and I had never read it since, because I finished this kind of a while ago and I hadn't really filmed a clip for it, which is why you're just getting like a jam-packed clip of it now. But I was reading another book by Veronica Roth, and you know how at the end of the story, at the end of some books, you'll get like a chapter, a snippet of the next book in the series, or if they don't have a next book in the series, of a different book that the author has that's very popular. Okay, so this particular book, which is Carve the Mark, which I'm not really going to talk about, but it had at the end of it, We Can Be Mended, I think it's called, and it's supposedly 33 pages, but on the ebook, which is what I was reading, it was 7 pages, and I was like, I thought all of the like short stories that she released within the Divergent world were like collected in this book, but I knew this wasn't in it, so I'm like, this is weird. And it's an epilogue 5 years after the events of Allegiant, which I found odd, because in Allegiant we already get an epilogue which is 2.5 years after the final events of the book. So I was like, okay, this is weird, but let's just like see what happens, like let's just read it. Which was a mistake. Oh my god, I had never known that this was a thing. Like I was just curious, and I wish I'd have just not cared. I didn't want to know. I didn't need to know what Veronica Roth had in store for our characters. Like I hate it so much. I hate it so much. I didn't even mark it on my Goodreads, because it is 7 pages that has managed to absolutely ruin my favorite character of the series, which if you don't know from like my whole ranting throughout this whole video is that I love Tobias, and how could she do this? And I felt so validated when I looked up on Goodreads and saw that everyone else thinks pretty much the same as me. But let's just get into what it actually is about because I haven't said it. Warning for spoilers. So if you do actually like the series, don't listen to this. Click off the video. You do not need to hear this. It is absolutely unnecessary. But that is my warning. Like, I wish I could go back in time and not read it. But I did, and now I need to rant about it. So okay, it's pretty much the same. Nothing's really changed from like the 2-year epilogue we got in the last Allegiant book anyway. So again, unnecessary. But we know that, Kara and Matthew are now engaged to be married. Shauna and Zeke are trying to have a baby. So like, we get these heartwarming moments. We learn about this, and we learn that Christina is helping Amar and Tori's brother George build up like the new version of Dauntless, which is the police. And Tobias was in politics, but then he dropped off and is now working in like volunteer stuff. So yes, so he's still kind of struggling with Triss's death and doesn't know how to move forward, and kind of Christina is there, and apparently like from the first page you can tell what Veronica Roth is going to do, and I was just in denial. I was like, no, she wouldn't. But basically Christina and Tobias end up together. What? They barely talk in the books. Like, they are barely talking in the books. And now if I ever reread that, I have to go to that scene where he goes, like, don't be such a smart mouth, I hate candor, and be like, yeah, that's your future. No, I don't care. I feel like we could have put Tobias with anyone else and it wouldn't be as maddening, like it wouldn't be so frustrating. Putting her with Christina, I know it's fictional, I know it's not even real, I know it's not a story, I'm pretending that it doesn't exist after this little rant session, but oh my god, Christina, seriously, I have nothing against Christina, but I just don't think it is logical. And the stuff that she starts saying, like, yeah, I don't think Triss would have cared, like, she died. She starts saying this nonsense, and she's like, she wouldn't want you to move on. Like, I don't think she cares what the hell you did with your life after. If she died, she died. Like, she doesn't care. And he's like, her hair's longer. I kind of never noticed that about her. Oh, it makes me so mad. I hate it so much. I literally, when I read it, I started ranting to my boyfriend, who knows nothing about Divergent or anything. And I just talked my ass off. I complained to him so long, and it was like 3 a.m. in the morning, like it was early. It has ruined 4 for me. Like, how would Tobias would never do that? It feels so out of character for him. Like, get him someone else, someone new, someone we don't know. I don't care, but not Christina, because it just feels weird. And I feel like in the real world that would be weird. Like, if my best friend died, I wouldn't get with her boyfriend, you know? Like, ugh, I don't like it at all. I don't want to know. But yes, that is a very unfortunate ending to the Divergent world. I wish I hadn't read that so quickly. It hurts my eyes now. It hurts my head thinking about it. I get so mad. But moving on. I wish things were different. I wish I loved the characters. Now I just have a warped vision of everything that is just annoying me throughout the whole thing. I don't know if I will ever reread the series again, just because my love of it has completely dwindled down knowing the end that Veronica Roth has written for them. So yes, I will have to hopefully cleanse my mind and hope to forget very soon about this, because I don't like it at all. I hate it so much. But let me know if you guys have read it, if you have not, if you like the ending that Veronica Roth has written for our characters. But with that is the end of this road. Thank you for joining me on reading Divergent, which was a roller coaster. It's a fun roller coaster, but thank you so much for watching anyway. My links are down below in the subscription box if you ever get curious. But yeah, without any further ado, let me just end this video. Hopefully you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.